You wake up, you reach for your phone before you even open your eyes. You light a cigarette before your first coffee. You open a dating app, you saw you delete it. You pour the drink you said was your last. What exactly is happening here? And why does it keep happening to the same people over and over, no matter how many times they promise themselves it stops tonight? Here is the contrarian claim we are building this whole video around. Addiction is not a chemical problem. It is a spiritual problem, a spiritual separation problem. And the reason modern medicine keeps losing the war on addiction is because it is treating a wound in the soul with a bandage on the body. We are going to explain exactly how this mechanism works, why it keeps getting worse in our culture, and what the ancient church already knew about it that we somehow forgot. If you are new here, and this is your first encounter with Orthodox Christianity as a serious intellectual and spiritual system, not just candles and chanting, there are some resources in the pinned comment and in the channel description about the journey to orthodoxy, from inquirer through catechumen to convert. A guide. So, whether you are just curious, already exploring, or ready to commit to the path, there is something there for exactly where you are right now, worth checking before you finish this video. So let's build the model first, because without it, nothing else makes sense. Here is your central image. Think of the human soul as a river. When the river flows correctly, it moves from the mountain to the sea, from your conscience outward into your actions. That is the natural order. That is what the fathers called living according to your true nature. Now here is what sin does. It does not destroy the river, it reverses the current. Suddenly, the river is flowing backwards from the outside world into you, dragging in whatever the world throws at it. Other people's anger becomes your anger. Other people's fear becomes your fear. And another people's appetites, they becomes yours too. The church fathers called these passions not emotions, but disordered drives that have hijacked the will. St. Paul the Apostle, named this with brutal precision in Romans chapter 7. For I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do, this I keep on doing. That is not a confession of weakness. That is a clinical description of a reversed river. The man knows exactly what is right. He has the intelligence. He has the intention. But something has flipped the current, and he cannot flip it back by trying harder. Now, here is where addiction enters the picture. Addiction is not the river. Addiction is what floats in when the river reverses. The substance, the cigarette, the drink, the screen, the pill is just the breeze. It is carried in by the reversed current. This is why you can take the debris out of the water and the current still runs backwards. This is why detox alone has roughly a 40 to 60% relapse rate within the first year. You cleaned the river, you did not fix the direction. Hot take alert. Most addiction treatment programs are essentially very expensive ways of scooping debris out of a backwards river. They are not wrong to do it. The debris genuinely dangerous. But if you do not address the reversal, you will be back scooping next season. Let's make this concrete. Consider a man. Call him Alexios, 34 years old, married, 2 kids, goes to church on Pascha and Christmas. He started drinking at 19 because his father was cold and his social anxiety was real. By 32, he has a respectable career and a functional life and a bottle of wine every single night. He has tried to quit 4 times. He reads about dopamine. He downloads a sobriety app. He tells his wife he has it under control. None of it sticks. Now here is the number that matters in Alexios' case. Not his blood alcohol level, not his liver enzymes. The number is this. How many times per day does Alexios feel resentment? Because if you count the moments he feels dismissed by his boss, irritated by traffic, quietly angry at his father for things that happened 20 years ago, you get to roughly 15 to 20 small resentments events per day. Each one reverses the river slightly. By evening, the current is fully backwards, and the wine is just what comes in. The Desert Fathers understood this pattern so precisely, it is almost embarrassing. Abba Pimen said, and I am paraphrasing, "Teach your mouth to say what is in your heart." What he meant is this: when you lose contact with your inner conscience, you start performing on the outside what has been injected into you from the outside. You become a puppet. You become a puppet of your own passions. And addictions are how the puppet rests between performances. To be fair, Alexios is not weak. Alexios is not stupid. Alexios is not lacking willpower. Alexios is living in a culture that has industrialized river reversal. Social media is designed to keep you in a low-grade state of comparison and resentment. News media profits from your anxiety. Advertising profits from your sense of inadequacy. Every single one of these systems is structurally a mechanism for keeping your river flowing backwards so that someone else can sell you the debris. So, imagine a doctor telling you your immune system is compromised because someone has been slowly poisoning your water supply for 15 years. But here is a very strong vitamin C tablet. That will be $400. Now let's go deeper into the mechanism, because this is where the fathers become almost shockingly modern. They identified one temptation above all others as the engine of addiction. Not lust, not greed, not sloth. Resentment, being upset. What the Greeks called logismoi, the intrusive thoughts that come in when the river reverses and begin to act in your mind as if they were your own will. Saint John Climacus, in the Ladder of Divine Ascent, writes that resentment is the nail that fixes the passion to the soul. You do not just feel it, it pins something in place. And here is the brilliant, terrible logic of how this connects to substance use. When you are upset, genuinely, psychologically upset, your body is in a stress state. The prefrontal cortex, the part that makes long-term decisions, goes quieter. The limbic system, the part that wants relief right now, gets louder. Every addiction researcher in the world will confirm this. What they may not tell you is that the church already gave this a name 15 centuries ago. Being outside yourself. Ecstasis in the negative sense. Literally standing outside your own soul. Proverb chapter 25 puts it in one line. Like a city whose walls are broken through is a person who lacks self-control. Not a person who lacks information, not a person who lacks treatment options. A person whose walls are down. And when the walls are down, anything walks in. Now here is the problem that nobody in the secular conversation wants to touch. If resentment is the engine, then the solution has to involve something that neutralizes resentment at its root, not manages it, not ventilates it in therapy, not channels it into exercise, neutralizes it. And there is only one framework in human history that has ever proposed for doing that. So, a coherent mechanism for doing that. Jesus says, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. This is not a niceness instruction. This is a river repair instruction. And here is how it functions mechanically. When someone wrongs you and you respond with prayer for them, not performance, actual interior movement, you are refusing to let the reversal happen. You are keeping your conscience in command. The fathers call this nepsis, sobriety of the mind. And notice the word they chose, sobriety. The same word we use for addiction recovery. This is not an accident. Abba Moses of Sketis, one of the most remarkable stories from the Egyptian desert and worth telling slowly, was a former robber, a violent man, a man with the kind of past that in modern terms would come with several diagnoses and a substantial criminal file. He becomes a monk. He becomes one of the greatest teachers of inner sobriety in Christian history. And when asked what the core of the work was, he said, "Stay in your cell and your cell will teach you everything." Which sounds mystical until you understand what he meant. Don't run, don't escape, sit with yourself and watch what comes up without obeying it. So this is essentially what every addiction counselor is trying to say in 12 weeks of group therapy. Abba Moses said it in one sentence, and he was a former criminal with no degree. History can be sometimes funny. So now, to connect this to our original metaphor, staying in your cell is keeping the river flowing the right direction under pressure. Because the pressure will come. The cravings come. The resentment thoughts come. The temptation is always external. A person who annoyed you, a memory that surfaces, a moment of boredom or loneliness. So the question is always the same. Does it reverse you? Or do you hold? So back to Alexios. Let's say Alexios does not fix his drinking with a sobriety app. Let's say Alexios starts with going to confession regularly, not as therapy, but as a mechanism for naming what is actually reversing his river. The resentment toward his father, the pride that makes him unable to ask for help, the habit of judging himself so harshly that the guilt that the guilt from drinking makes him need to drink again. So that guilt loop is its own form of the reversed river. You sin, you feel guilt, the guilt is unbearable, so you sin to relieve the guilt gets worse. So this is precisely what Saint Apostle Paul is describing in Romans chapter 7. And it is also what every addiction therapist calls the shame, named relapse cycle. So, but the church's answer to the same cycle is not self-compassion journaling. It is absolution and actually sacramental break in the loop. Not because you deserve it, because the loop has to be cut from outside the loop. This is structurally genius, and nobody talks about it this way. In the Old Testament, we discover something like this. I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and vexation of spirit. That word vexation in Hebrew, it's a striving after wind. This is the description of the addicted person perfectly. Enormous energy, enormous striving, reaching for something the hand can never actually hold. Because the thing they are reaching for is not a substance, it is the peace that the substance briefly mimics. And here is the thing the substance is mimicking, the peace of nepsis, the sobriety that comes from a conscience that is actually running the show. When you have that, even briefly, even partially, you do not need the cigarette to taste right. You do not need the drink to take the edge off, because the edge was only there because the river was backwards. Now, let's return to the hook, because we promised to. You reached for your phone before you opened your eyes. You lit the cigarette. You poured the drink. Here is what was actually happening. Something earlier, probably many somethings over many years, reversed your river. And the phone, the cigarette, the drink, they are not your problem. They are not your problem. They are your symptom. They are your symptom. They are the debris. And the reason you keep reaching for them is that nobody told you to fix the direction of the river, only to stop picking up the debris. So now 3 practical takeaways that, and these are not generic. First, map your resentments, not your cravings. Before you go to sleep, write down every time you were upset, annoyed, or irritated today. Not what you drank or consumed, what reversed you. The craving always follows the reversal with a delay of minutes to hours. If you catch the reversal, you may catch the craving before it catches you. Second, use the liturgical weapons for what they were actually designed for. Fasting is not a diet. It is a practice in holding the river in place under pressure. Prayer is not asking God for things. It is mechanically the act of reorienting your will toward conscience rather than toward your latest emotional injury. Confession is not moral accounting. It is a sacramental deletion of the loop. Use these things for their actual function, not their ceremonial one. And third should be the joke matters here. The joke matters here. And I mean this seriously. A woman said to her husband, she said, "Darling, I had a dream about my birthday. And in the dream, I dreamt about earrings, a bracelet, and a necklace. What do you think that means? And the husband said, just wait till your birthday, okay? And then, on her birthday, he gave her a package. She opened it, and it was a book, How to Interpret Dreams. So here's the point. The person who is addicted is telling you through every craving exactly what wound is underneath it. The mistake is giving them the manual instead of addressing the wound. When someone you love is stuck in addiction, stop analyzing the substance and ask, what is reversing their river? What are they running from? What resentment is nailing the passion in place? Now, here is the cynical line, because we promised one of those two. The modern addiction industry has a structural incentive to treat symptoms, not causes, because causes do not require monthly prescriptions. The church has no such incentive. It has been saying the same thing for 2000 years for free. For free. We just stopped listening. If you have been watching this, and something in it is resonating, not just intellectually, but in your gut, that is worth paying attention to. That feeling is your conscience being louder than usual. Do not escape it. The desert fathers called that moment the beginning of sobriety. Not when you put down the substance, when you stop running from what you know. When you stop running from what you know. So the river wants to flow correctly. This is what the church means when it says that the human being is made in the image of God. Not that you look a certain way, but that there is a correct direction built into you, and you can feel when you are violating it. The passions are not you. The cravings are not you. The reversed current is not you. This is the most important thing the fathers said about the addicted person. What is enslaved in you, what is enslaved in you is not the real you. And the real you is reachable. The real you is reachable. Go to confession. Fast once this week with intention. Write down what reversed you today. And the next time you reach for the thing you always reach for, pause for 10 seconds and ask, what upset me before this craving started? Because somewhere upstream, about an hour ago, your river turned around. And now you know how to find it. One more thing before you go. Whatever brought you to this video, curiosity, a crisis, a question you cannot shake, or simply a faith you want to understand more deeply. You are not the first person to stand at this door. Thousands of people have walked this road before you, and the church has been keeping the map for 2000 years. If you want to start working it seriously, the resources in the pinned comment and the description about the journey to the Orthodoxy are there for exactly that. So, wherever you are right now, skeptic, seeker, catechumen, or convert, there is a next step. Go find it. God bless you, and see you next time.